Do not let yourself get turned around. Now, that's a pretty bold statement to say at the beginning of a video, but these are some challenges and some things that I hear from students when they're learning how to mix color. See if you recognize any of these, if you've said them before yourself. I'm overwhelmed. This is too much for me. I thought I could do this, but I can't. I don't understand. Shouldn't I be getting this by now? I can't keep up. Wait, warm colors, cool colors? What does that even mean? What do I do with that? Okay, now that I learned the color wheel, I know the color wheel. I learned the color wheel in elementary school. But what do I do with it? How does that apply? Well, like, where do I go from here? Oh, my brain hurts. I can't do this. I give up. I need help. Most people have, and that's okay. And that's actually quite normal. Until you understand, you don't understand. And that's okay, because everybody's got to start from somewhere. This video is part 1 of a 4-part series that I've put together for you to help you understand color mixing and how it applies in real life, real world, real painting and illustrations that you desire to do. This part 1, we're working with temperature, warms and cool colors. Now, I'm sure you've probably heard those terms along the way, but what does it mean? What does it mean? Why do we need to know this? How does this apply to painting that I want to do? I want to paint a building. What do I need to know about this for? I just want to paint the building. Okay, so yes, and yes. I want you to paint the building. Yes, I want you to paint this portrait. But understanding this groundwork will help you become intuitive when you go to pick up a color. It's like any other thing that you learn, whether it be piano, learning music notes, learning rhythm, learning harmony. Color is the same way. And once you understand it and practice with it, you're gonna gain that visual vocabulary that's gonna propel you forward and help you out with every single artwork, every single painting, every single illustration, all of that. Okay, so bear with me. Okay, I'm going to take this step by step for you. And if you have any questions or comments, please ask me below and I will help you out as best as I can. Now, God laid this series on my heart for you. This is a big struggle I find with students, and I think this is one of the biggest hurdles, color mixing and what color to mix with what in order to get certain colors and how to make your paintings harmonize together. This is the biggest hurdle, I think. So let's get into it. Enough talking. Part 1 of 4 parts starts today. All right, so warm colors. We've all heard warm colors. Again, what does this mean? Without getting too scientific, basically they're colors that create a warm feeling when you look at them. These colors have a red or a yellow undertone by nature to them. So red, yes, it's a primary color and you can't mix red from mixing other colors. However, the warm reds do have, like the spectrum red, looks more on the orangey end versus maybe a true red. So when I say it has like a yellow undertone to it, it just means that it kind of leans a little bit more towards the orange end of the red versus kind of going the opposite direction towards the blue. So when we lay down our second primary color, which is here, the permanent yellow deep, when I look at that permanent yellow deep, because I already had it in my stash, you can see that it kind of is like a school bus color or a sunshine color. It already has a little bit of red into it, so it automatically looks warm. And this illustration board is kind of cheap scrap illustration board, so it really soaks in the color and the pigment like a dry sponge. So I have to keep going over it. But you can see that yellow kind of leans towards the red, and that red leans towards the yellow. So now that we're going to go into the blue, the third of the primary colors, this is going to be a warm blue. Now, if you've never heard of blue being warm before, well, it's true. Blue can be warm. It's not always a cool color. I know, it's kind of trickery, isn't it? So yes, you've been told in elementary school, middle school art class that blue is a cool color. Blue is cold. It makes you think of ice. It makes you think of snow. It makes you think of the depths of the ocean. Well, yes, and it is a cool color, but here, and Winsor Newton, a lot of other paint manufacturers or any art supplies do make a warm blue. Now, why do I say warm blue? Well, this blue has a little bit of, you guessed it, red mixed into it. Now, it's not a lot where it's overpowering, because red pigment by nature is extremely overpowering. That and maybe an opera rose color are the most powerful pigments. Now, you'll see as we get into more of the series, the pigment strength and how that takes over. We'll learn about that a little bit more in our next lesson. But for this video, we're just going to stick with mixing the colors in kind of equal strengths as best as I can to show you. So we're taking the spectrum red and we're taking the permanent yellow deep and mixing that together with that spectrum red. Now I'm trying to get a good ratio of yellow and red together to create what I would consider halfway between this yellow and this red. Now, the ratio is a little bit off just because of the pigment strength of the red. Again, we'll go into that in the next lesson in video 2. But for right now, I've got a nice middle of the road orange. It's almost like the inside of a nectarine or a peach. Kind of gives you that warm orangey vibe. All right, so the next color we're going to mix is the green. So I'm mixing the ultramarine blue. Again, it's that warm blue and a permanent yellow deep. So that warm yellow and that warm blue, and you guessed it, we're getting a warm green with that. So the strength of the yellow, again, is not as pigmented and as strong as the blue. So we'll have to add a little bit more yellow, but I feel like this is kind of middle of the road again. Now I'm not adding very much water to my mixture when I mix the paints. Even though gouache tends to dry out and get dry pretty easy, I really wanted the colors to be as full strength and full saturation as much as possible. So that way each of the hues that I'm creating and mixing really show exact color of what they're supposed to look like when I mix full strength with full strength. If I diluted any of these too much with water, the full strength color will overpower the diluted color, if that makes sense. So I'm keeping all of these paints as full strength as I can. All right, so the last color in the warm color wheel that I have is the ultramarine blue and the spectrum red. Now again, I'm trying to get a good ratio. You can see as I'm mixing, it's kind of going into a little bit of the reddier end. So I'm kind of using all of my blue that I had, all the ultramarine, versus just a little bit of the red. Now it looks black here when I lay down these colors, but it's not. There is such high concentration of pigment in each one of these colors that when they are mixed together, the spectrum red and the ultramarine blue, it creates such an intense, powerful, dark, warm violet or purple, but a technical term is violet. So if I was to add a little bit of water to this or thin it out, you would see more of the traditional violet, traditional purple come through, but it's more like an eggplant color at this point. It is very dark, it is very saturated, it is very intense. Now, this can be used for painting darker values of the red or darker values of the blue. Can also be used for painting flowers or again the eggplant, or in addition to 1,000 other things, this can be used for a shadow in warm sunlit areas. It can be shadows on a face, human skin in the sunlight, warm shadows that it creates, the chiaroscuro from the light meeting the dark. And the dark areas can be a nice warm shadow using a color like this. So that is the warm color palette that I used with those 3 colors of gouache. So we've got those 6 colors created from just 3 primary colors. So you can see as a whole, all of those colors harmonize together because they're all mixed from one another. Okay? And also, I thought, because I have newsprint underneath where I'm working, so you can see the colors on the white seem brighter and bolder. I also wanted to test out these colors that I just made from the warm palette onto this newsprint, because I want to see how the colors lay down on the newsprint and what the colors look like on a darker background, or more of like a natural colored background. So that's what I'm laying out here. So you can see it's a little bit different because the texture of the paper is different than the illustration board texture. Also, the illustration board is very, very close to being the purest bright white. And then the newsprint, of course, is a dull natural color with lots of fibers. You can see how the fibers have been stained in the paper. So that's just a little bit of difference on how it's good to test your colors on different papers, different substrates, so you know how that color is going to behave. Cool colors. All right, opposite of the warm colors. So the cool color palette, of course, all these colors now are going to have that cooler vibe to it. It's going to have that colder feeling, and yes, even yellow. This primary yellow is like a lemon yellow, and this is considered a cool yellow. It doesn't have any red to it, and it doesn't have any warm vibes to it. It's very cool, it's very cold, like think a lemon. And the red that I have here, this red is Permanent Rose. And Permanent Rose has a cool undertone to it, like there's blue in it. And the blue that we're using here, the primary blue, has a green undertone to it. So it's more on the cooler end of blue. If it had the red in it, it would be back on that warm scale. But that it has green in it, it's on the cooler scale. So here's a little bit of a game you can play. Take any object, either like printed in a magazine or a book or even outside. Study that object. Is it in the sunshine? Is it in the shadows? What color is that? Really study those images to see, is that a cool red or warm red? Does it look orangey or does it look bluey? It just takes a little bit of practice, but playing a game like that can really help you build that innate sense of, oh yes, that's cool. Oh yes, that's warm. And that will help build those skills when you go to choose a color to paint or to mix. All right, so cool color palette. We are well into laying down these colors. So we've got that cool permanent rose for our red. It has that blue undertone to it. Now, yes, you're not going to see like a strong blue to it. But if you looked at that rose color, it leans a little bit towards the purple end. And what's next to purple? Blue. So it leans towards that blue. So there we have a cool red. All right, so that yellow, lemony yellow, very icy cold yellow, very cool yellow, completely different from the yellow we used in our warm palette. And again, our primary blue has a cool tone to it, like ice, like snow, like shadows of a snow. Think water, lake. This cool blue has a green touch to it. So it is more on the cooler end. If it had a little bit of violet into it, like the ultramarine, it would be on the warm end. So again, you just kind of get a sense of what colors are in the undertone to it to be able to depict if it's warm or cool. All right, so moving on, mixing this permanent rose and the primary yellow make an orange, but it's a cooler orange. That's why I put the ER on there, cooler. Yes, orange by nature, like those fire colors, would seem to be warm. But because we're mixing a cooler red and a cooler yellow, we're going to get a cooler orange. So this orange may have a little bit of a cooler blue undertone to it, which makes it in the cooler section. Now, again, you don't see blue sticking out of that. You don't see it being muddy, like there's blue mixed in with it. But if you compare that to the warmer orange, you can see the difference by comparison, that one has more of a more of a redder tone to it versus a blue tone to it. Again, it just takes a little bit of practice and you're going to get there. So mixing this primary yellow in with the blue, the primary blue, we are going to get a cooler green. Now this green, by comparison to the warm palette, this green is more of a fresh green, like leaves on a tulip or the stems on flowers. Just very vibrant, bright, fresh green, because that yellow is so bright. Now, if that yellow was more of a warmer yellow, like in our warm palette, and I added a warm yellow to this instead of a cool yellow, you're going to see more of a mossy green or more of that dark grassy green like we had in the warm palette. If we keep our colors cool and we mix cool colors together, we are going to see brighter colors. Now this color palette, the cool color palette, seems to be more of a primary color palette versus the warm color palette. You can see specifically in this primary blue and permanent rose This cool violet seems to be more of a traditional violet or a traditional purple compared to the warm violet palette. Now, these colors seem fresher, seem brighter, seem more juvenile, maybe that you would see like in a children's bedroom or children's toys, versus the warm palette that maybe you would see in vintage style. And that's because of old chemicals and also the heavy red payload. Okay, so right now we have our cool palette done. Now I am going to show you a side by side of our warm palette and our cool palette. So I am going to put the colors again up here at the top on my newsprint, and you can see visually the difference between that warm and cool palette. So you can try this out too with your paints. Any paint set will work. If you don't have gouache, you can use just a Crayola set, watercolor set from the store if you want to practice playing with colors and pigments and mixing. Okay, so you can see the difference between each of these sets. All right, so moving on to the comparison of each of these color wheels, the warm compared to the cool. You can automatically see, now you couldn't see it while we were working on them individually so much, but you can see right here the difference between the oranges and the greens on each of those palettes. So, all right, so as the greens, you can see the freshness of the green on the cool palette versus the muted green on the left-hand side on the warm palette. Each of these colors is so different from each other, and it only took 2 colors to mix to get each of these secondary colors, the orange, the green, and the purple. So we've got our 3 primaries, red, yellow, and blue, a cool set, a warm set. And from each of those 3 colors, we made an additional 3 colors by mixing those colors in our sets. Now, this is just a little extra study that I did because I'm extra, apparently. But I wanted to show you what these colors look like on chipboard. So this is like the back of a sketchbook. You can see that the colors are very different, again, on a different substrate, different paper. And the colors will look completely different. So here's some extra studies that I did. So a couple days ago, my son and I, after I picked him up from school, we drove by a paint store. And I had him film this for me because it was perfect for this video. So like I said earlier about the red pigments being super strong and the yellow pigments being extremely less dominant. And again, we'll talk about this more in the next video. But you can see from these south-facing windows, these paint swatches that have been bleached out for over 10 years, I would say, you can see the dominant pigment colors are the reds. All of these paint swatches used to be bright and bold, and you could see individual colors. Now, these colors are very muted and washed out from the sun. The yellow tones, the yellow pigments have been completely sun bleached. Okay, the reds remain and some of the strong pigment blues remain. This also happens in old photographs, which is something that I'm eager to teach you as well, being a vintage inspired channel. So I just thought that this was perfect. I couldn't pass it up. I had to show you because you've seen this. You've seen posters bleached out and plastic signs and so much more. All right, so I just wanted to get out a feel of my illustrations at the end of this video because I wanted to show you what the ultimate goal here is. Here's what we're working towards. We're working towards building up illustrations using these color palettes. So this color palette that I used for this gouache piece is all warm. When you look at this illustration that I did of Niagara Falls, it's got this daredevil hanging. You can immediately see that it looks old. It's got that old vintage vibe to it, and it's got warm yellowy orange undertones to it. Now this whole illustration ties together by using an undertone that I selected, the sunset orange ink. So I used that as an undertone before I painted the gouache over the top. So that way, automatically, my warm color palette will harmonize. If I didn't do an undertone, these colors would look very bright and very, they would look very current. Current. The river. So no, it would look very like the painting just was painted today versus an old photograph that I painted from. Now this was a black and white photo that I used for reference. And I wanted to make sure that I used a warm color palette to achieve that vintage muted feel to it. So by using that warm orangey yellow undertone, the ink will then in turn mix with the gouache colors that I put on top. Now you can see that warm underglow coming through the sky, the building, the water, and on these men that are standing here on this bridge. All right, the next illustration was also a black and white photo reference. Now, this one is just a little bit different. Even though I still have those same warm undertones, the layers that I put over the top are mostly warm. There are some cool colors that I put on around the man as a juxtaposition to him. I wanted the water to feel cooler in this to kind of create more of an eerie sense of this man went over the falls. So this outfit, even though it's white, it has warm grays added in over the top to create the folds of the fabric. So that's another trick down the road we'll get to. But again, this was the same series of black and white photos. I used that same sunset orange ink as my undertone, and then gouache is painted over the top. Now, all of this is warm and it's cohesive, except some of the leaves on the trees are very, very bright. And also some of the water blues that I had painted are very cool blues down at the bottom of the basin at the bottom of the falls. So I wanted to give you that warm sense of atmosphere, that warm glow of that evening sunset, or it could be sunrise. That warm glow just is casted throughout this whole illustration. So this was another black and white photo. Again, I did the same thing I've been doing, is using that sunset orange ink from Noodlers. I painted that down first, then gouache over the top. Now, there's some greens in her dress, and those greens are brighter, and those are cooler greens, or greenish blues. And the reason why I added cool in against her warm navy blue dress is because that dress looked like it had some sheen to it, like it was silk or even satin. It had a high contrast sheen to it, and I really wanted to capture that because this is very Edwardian period, and I want to make sure that I was accurately representing. And also the wood, the wood is warm, it's old, it's very teaked, it's got that patina to it, and so all those brush strokes had warm orangey browns to them. All right, now this one, complete opposite from what I've been doing. You can see that these colors have a cool tone to them. Even the pinks, even the blues, they have cool tones to them. There are warmer colors in here, but by far, this is a very cool piece. The shadows are cooler from the donuts, the cast shadow. That rosy, pinky color that I painted in the Baker's Dozen, that is more on the purplier end. It has a blue undertone to it. Those are cool shadows that are casted on the donuts. The sprinkles are cooler in nature. The powder white on the that one, the jelly-filled donut, that is cooler. You can see the difference from the previous illustration to this one. Even though some of these bottom donuts here look warmer, they're cooler browns made with adding blue into the shadow work. I hope you're not confused. I really, really hope you're not confused. If you have any questions at all, please ask them in the comments below. This little book, this color index book, is one of 2 books that I have. This index book has series of color combinations, swatches. It's used for graphic design work, which I also do. And we've got 2 color combos. We've got 4 color combos. We've got warm, cool, different color combinations that we can choose from. We can flip through this book together, look at the warm and cool colors, and we're going to take our color palettes and we are going to mix colors together. And I'm going to show you how to mix colors that will match up closely, as closely as possible, to some of these color combinations. So this is the next step in our color mixing journey. Don't let this intimidate you. Learning how to mix color is such a process. It took me decades to get where I am. So please have some patience with yourself. You're gonna get this. And don't be afraid to practice on your own, because honestly, that's gonna be the best teacher. Way better than you could ever learn from me. All right. That's it for this video. Catch me in the next video where we take our color mixing to the next step. All right. Thank you so much. God bless you, and see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey, if you didn't catch my last sketchbook tour, check out this video right here.